Welcome to Abaddon Planet. I'm your host, Joel Abaddon. Thank you for joining me on this never-ending quest to learn how to teach better. Today on episode 132 of the podcast, we're talking about rugby. Yeah, exactly. What I learned from playing rugby and how I believe some of those moments led to me learning how to teach better. Specifically, or relatedly, I was recently inducted into the University of Wisconsin Rugby Club Hall of Fame. I can't tell you how surprised I was to get that call, how honored I was to get that call. And then thinking about, when the TJ called me up to let me know and basically say, hey, yeah, you're going to have to give a speech. And so it got me into being reflective on my experience playing rugby, and then, thinking about what that experience meant to me, and then also seeing later now how the ripples of that experience and what they've meant into my life. And so, developed a speech, and it was about a 17-minute speech. And then talked to my coach, Skip, who's going to introduce me. And he's like, well, you got about 5 minutes. And I didn't want to, there's a number of people that get inducted. If everyone gives a really long speech, it's going to be a long event. And so I'm like, yeah, you're right. And they probably don't want to hear 17 minutes of a speech. So, but yeah, I have a podcast. And so why not give that speech here? So, and really, I really was focusing in on what in my experience playing rugby helped me learn how to teach better. And so, just like I do on the Road to Better Teaching podcast, where I talk about moments of professional growth and having the guests reflect on a single moment and think about what does that mean to them and their development as a teacher. Same thing for me. I'm thinking back to moments that I had in rugby and thinking about what did those things mean for me and my development as a teacher as I am today. So and most of these moments are connected in with my coaches. And I'm going to start first with my forwards coach. So in rugby, there's backs and there's forwards, right? And just to be clear, I was not a rugby player going into college. I didn't have a lot of experience playing it. So my experience was very raw going into college, and I really enjoyed it. And so a little bit of context. All right, so first I want to talk about John Sander. So John was our forwards coach, and John was an amazing individual. He was I would say, in my experience with him, he was kind, gentle, wise, like in the Southern way, wise, sort of man. But then you found out after you'd tell stories, or you'd hear stories from some of his teammates from back in the day in the 70s, and you see what he looked like. He kind of looked like a Jesse Ventura's like shorter, angrier brother, and they called him the Weapon. And so you realize he wasn't as kind and gentle probably back in the day. But when we knew him as a forwards coach, he was such a force. He was kind of like the dad we wish we all had. He was like, just always knew your name, would speak to you, ask questions about you, just one of those people that helped you be seen. And when I think about, some of the things that I've learned about building relationships and those teachers that make an impact in people's life, one of the things that people keep coming back to is that person saw me. And I knew that John saw me, right? And he saw others, and I wasn't the only one. So like he could make you feel like you were the only person you were talking to. He's always present. And one story I have from that is we were coming back from playing the University of Illinois, and we just got beat up. They took it to us. One of my teammates, Lang Jacobson, he broke his jaw in that game. I think, concussed. I got a knee in the head, and I got pulled out of the game. Side note, that Lang got, when Lang broke his jaw, we, being good rugby people, threw a party for his jaw the following week. And that party happened to be the first date I've ever had with my girlfriend, or with a girl at the time that eventually is now my wife of over 20 years. All right, back to the story. So we got beat up by Illinois, and I'm driving back. And part of rugby too is like the host, or the home team will throw a party for you before, so like after the game you get something to eat, and before you head home, and that didn't happen that game. So I was just angry at a lot of things. I was angry, I think, at the way that Illinois played, because I don't think they played, maybe the way that we would want to be played against. Maybe a little rough. Maybe the refs might have been angling a little bit for Illinois during that game, making excuses. But anyway, I just wasn't in a good mood. And driving all the way back through Illinois, just cornfields and like long drive, and I had to go to the bathroom. So pull over and just probably got the angry face on, and go into the restroom, and all of a sudden I hear Joel, and there's John Sander. He had gone to the game, drove by himself, was driving back, and it looked like I saw him. He called my name, and I look over. He's got the little bench, and he's got his little cooler out, and he's got a little snack. He's just having a little rest. He's actually resting at the rest area rather than just using it as a bathroom stop. And calls me over, and we start talking. And it was one of those conversations that just has stuck with me, because I knew he wasn't in a hurry. I knew he was fully present. I knew he was taking in everything. He was hearing my emotions about the day and about the game, and about why I was upset, and trying to figure out why I was upset, and then also trying to offer some wisdom and perspective on it. Like, hey, yes, you lost the game. Yes, you don't want to lose, but think about and what was maybe you didn't like about the way the other team was playing, and whatnot, and like what is important about building relationships with your teammates, about having that experience together, about what do you do next to kind of use that experience to grow closer together as a team and to keep moving on, and to knowing that this is a temporary thing. This team only exists for a season, because with people coming and going and semesters like that in rugby and in college club rugby, it wasn't a scholarship sport. Like, this is like, hey, people had free time in order to commit to being a part of a team. The team did drastically change from semester to semester, and knowing that we just don't have this thing for it, it's just so fragile, this thing, for a brief amount of time. And if you just spend it being bitter and angry and just angry at yourself or your team or the other team, like, you're just wasting time. And so knowing that, and having that conversation, and seeing like how he was talking to me, and I think like that's what I'm striving for in talking with people that I'm teaching. So if it's my kids, if it's my students, if my doc students, like being completely present, being there, hearing them, offering perspective, offering wisdom that they're needing in the moment. I think that was one of those moments that really stood out with me. Another moment is from another coach, and he was more of a part-time coach than John was Stuart Daly. And Stuart was a backs coach, and I don't really think he liked us forwards much. So again, rugby there's forwards, kind of like linemen, if you relate it to football, and backs are kind of like, well, backs, running backs, and wide receivers, like the fast guys. So there's kind of the grunts, the forwards, and the backs are like the fast guys. And then I played flanker in 8, which is kind of on the fringe of the pack, what they might call it. Anyway, I was kind of fast, but not as fast as lots of those other guys. Anyway, so I remember he was running practice one day, and he was British. He was I think a former professional soccer player, and he would, like, every now and then, I think Skip was gone. He owned or worked with a lot of Culligans in the area, was like president of one of them. And so he had some business trips. Obviously, he's gone frequently. And so Stuart's there, and he's running practice or running this drill. I can't quite remember. But all I remember is he yelled at us. All of a sudden, he's like, all right, all you forwards, stop, raise your hands. And then he wanted us everywhere on the field at all times. And I remember he was standing right next to the ball, so the ball just broke down. He's like, raise your hands if you're nowhere near me. You're either lazy, stupid, or unfit, or a combination. And then he proceeded to go through all the combinations, and I was like, oh my gosh, we're but I say that, and in a laughing way, because we knew he liked, I mean, I'm just kidding, I knew he liked us. But he always wanted us to work hard. He wanted us to get as good as we could be. And also, too, if he gave you a compliment, it was meaningful. Like, it wasn't like, the participation trophies that we might get all the time now, but it was like, actually, like, hey, if he said you did a good job, you did a good job. like he liked what you did. He'd say, hey, this stuff you're doing is awful. Stop it. This stuff is good. Keep doing that. Right. And so you knew you could count on what he was talking about. And I think about, I kind of connect that to my experience with Meg Meyer, Dr. Meg Meyer, who was my supervisor when I was a student teacher. And there's people that really didn't like being supervised by Dr. Meg Meyer because she would, same thing. She would, when it was good, she'd tell you. When it was not, she would tell you. And it was like, and I think about it now, and I think about what I'm talking about with my supervisees or my students, and they're just learning how to teach mathematics, probably in a way that's maybe a little bit different than what they were used to, right? There's more group work. There's more asking how and why questions. There's less of them doing stuff, like doing stuff on the board, because we want the students to do stuff. So it's a little bit different. And that's, kind of a cognitive shove. And then also, too, that they're not being told that everything they did was awesome because, teachers were typically pretty good students and they were told everything that they did was good. And so now they're maybe having a little bit of struggle and figuring out what does it look like to actually teach math. And I remember, same thing with Meg Meyer is when I was in Katie Aspinwall's class in Savannah Oaks. Was it middle school? Savannah Oaks Middle School? Yeah, it must have been middle school. Savannah Oaks Middle School in Verona, Wisconsin. And Meg came to observe me, and she saw me doing some things. She's like, "Ooh, this was good. This was creative." Or, "Hey, by the way, when you're writing on the board with your right hand, you're ignoring the left side of the room. You got to turn around, man." You're. And it was like, oh, she was right. She was right. And I that constructive criticism and then also feedback made me a better teacher. And also then that's something that I want to do with my students. It's like, hey, this feedback, even though it might not be exactly what you want to hear, it's not all, sunshine and lollipops. It is a love letter to your future teaching. It's a love letter to your future students. I'm loving on your future teaching by giving you this feedback to make you better. If I didn't care, I wouldn't say anything. And so having that from Stuart was a pretty good life lesson as well. And also, I remember Stuart, he was a leadership consultant, and he brought us as a rugby team, like the leadership of the rugby team and the coaches, we came together and we had this like vision session. Something he probably did with businesses like that charge a lot of money. He did it with us, right? And he thought about like, hey, what does this organization look like in the future? If you're putting it in a better place, what does it look like? Visioning towards that. And then thinking like, okay, what do we do today to move towards that? And we had like, big Post-its on the walls, and we had all sorts of, good sounding words and things. And then thinking about what are the actions we can take now? And what I learned back from that experience was like, one, the power of organizations, right? Organizations that have an institutional memory, right? So like people that are in leadership now, that's leading to bringing up the next leaders. And so we can trace in the rugby club, you could trace like, hey, I was captain, president, and then before that, I was under this, captain or president who was under this, like you can keep going back throughout the organization. There's this institutional memory. And so there is this building up of what the organization could be. And really, everything we were talking about with Stuart was things that we were not going to benefit from, right? Things that we would not see tangible, everything that we did as a club, if we collected dues, if we did something, everything was for something that we would get access to. So if we're collecting dues, it's to, pay for things that we would, pay for the, food after a game, or pay for the banquet that we're going to, do, everything we would see the benefit of. We were talking about stuff that was beyond us, right? That we're actually now seeing happen with the UW Rugby Club now. They have like, they're doing things that we were talking about. Not saying that we were the catalyst of it. Like, no, the leadership and organization, the alumni have been big helps with that. I'm just saying, it was the first time as a young adult that you're like, hey, let's think about how we make this thing better, not for you, but for the people that are going to come after you. And I think about that for, what I'm doing now, teaching teachers. I'm teaching teachers that are going to benefit kids that I might not ever meet, right? And that's there's some like, the roots of that or maybe what happened in that meeting, and thinking about my investment in other organizations like Association of Mathematics Teacher Educators and the Mississippi Council of Teachers of Mathematics and the Mississippi Association of Mathematics Teacher Educators and like PMNA, all these like math ed organizations that I'm trying to be a part of. A lot of the benefits that you're not seeing. You're doing it for the good of the field, right? Or you're writing an article to help people that you might not ever meet, right? So I think that was interesting. Then then I also wanted, and I did thank Skip in my, I did get a chance to thank Skip and John. I didn't get a chance to thank Stuart. But Skip is another one that I like to think about with regards to my development. And Skip Heffernan, who was our coach, and he was the coach of the club for a long time, but he was our coach when I was a member of the team from 98 to 2001, at least. At least that's what my memory gives me to. Fall of 2008 to fall of 2001. And so I asked him to introduce me because I think, one, I'm pretty sure he was behind me getting nominated. And two, well, I know that. And two, just, he was someone that made it that I wanted to play and keep playing. And I think about this. So, I wanted to play a contact sport. I wanted to do something to represent University of Wisconsin. Wisconsin, I have in my office right now, I'm staring at it, is a huge Bucky Badger up in the corner. It's like I'm maybe 3 feet tall, probably. Bucky, and Wisconsin sports, Wisconsin Badgers were like the center of our college watching experience. They were the D1 school. I was from northern Wisconsin. Like that was the thing that we wanted to do. And even to think like possibly, I kind of had this dream of possibly walking on as a Badger, and like it was never going to happen. I was too small, too slow, whatever. But getting a chance to think about club sports, okay. And then I had a roommate that played rugby, and I like to say that he invited me and I went, but I didn't right away. Another friend played lacrosse, and I went and started playing lacrosse, and I really wasn't good at lacrosse. I went to a practice. They handed me a defenseman stick, which is a longer lacrosse stick than a typical lacrosse stick that you might think of, longer. But and we just started playing, which is fun, like getting out there. But I didn't know how to cradle. Like when you run in lacrosse, you got to like if the ball is in the little net thing, you got to like almost like do a curl as you're running, and using gravity, it kind of stays in the net. Well, I didn't know how to do that, or it wasn't coordinated enough to do that, whatever. And so I'd have the ball, I'd be playing a little bit and getting the ball, and so I had it, but I wasn't doing the cradle thing, and the long stick is sticking out on the back. And the only thing the other team would do is go back and they would hit the back of my stick, right? And so just like a pendulum, the ball goes rocketing in the air, and I'm just like, whatever, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, and just not being very successful. And so then the lacrosse field is right next to the rugby field, and there I see my friends over there. They're piling on top of each other, and it's like that might be my skill level right over there. Not to say that rugby doesn't involve skill, but I'm like, at least I know how to do that. All right, that looks a lot like football. And I go over there, and the reason why I'm talking about Skip is I don't remember, besides my friend, I don't remember one person at that lacrosse tryout practice like connecting with me. But I remember when I went to the field for the first time for rugby. My roommate at the time was there, Kurt Hellman. But then I remember Michael Woods, and Will Enright, and Garth, and Paul, and all these people that I knew their names right, and John. Pretty sure John was there, John Sander, and he'd learn about. And I remember just feeling like, hey, this was something. And I knew that Skip, as the coach of the team, had created that environment, right? And I think about what the kind of teaching that I want people to do. I want them to be that guide on the side, not the sage on the stage. And yes, Skip would do things. He would tell us what to do, and we would do. But you think about the environment that he created, a welcoming environment, right? And he had created, captains and leaders, and like had fostered an environment where you felt welcomed and a part of this thing. And even, you start playing and you're starting to figure things out, and he'd coach you up and tell you, a little bit, hey, try not to do this, think about your angle coming in here, or, you can't run all out every single time. Maybe you got to pace yourselves and like thinking about going to this break and then this break. And even thinking about passing the ball, or maybe you should go down there. And when you go down to rugby, you have to put the ball down. But I remember he said, you put it down immediately, which is a 5-syllable word. So you got some time to put it down to make sure you still retain possession. And I just, having someone that, again, created this environment that I wanted to be a part of, that made me keep coming back, that made like, hey, you show up and you be good in this environment. That's something I say with my students all the time, show up and be good. And I remember seeing like Skip would not just be a coach talking at you, he'd be with us doing it, right? He would do some things. He would be throwing the ball around because he was still, I think, playing in old boys games. But also, too, he'd do his workouts. He'd do like a sprint workout while we're, doing our drill work. And it was like, hey, this guy is showing up same time. He's trying to get better as we're getting better. And it made you just want to be a part of something bigger. And then also, too, Skip, I know he was in those conversations where he's like, hey, I see the gifts and abilities of this kid. Let's give him a try at this position. Because I didn't know what position to play. And so I was in the pack, and the forwards had maybe decent size. And he put me at flanker, and he put me at 8-man. And then thinking about, outside of the field, there was leadership within the club. And I knew that, hey, there was nudges to maybe try, I think I was treasurer first, and then got to be president and captain, and like all these things that you knew he was a part, or then being selected to play both on B side and then eventually on A side, and like these opportunities that I know he was nudging me towards. And just, having someone that's saying, hey, I see your gifts and abilities. I want to help you realize those for the club, beyond both on the field, off the field, and then also thinking about what is capable beyond rugby, both outside of the club. And I knew that he saw me and some of the things that I could be capable of. And so even so, like eventually when I get nudged to do a PhD, which was beyond my recognition. Well, I already was doing something beyond recognition of being a rugby player. Like, who'd have thought I would be playing rugby, right? And then to get the opportunity to do the PhD, and maybe it's like, hey, if I could do something hard that not a lot of people get a chance to do, like play rugby, maybe I can go do a PhD. I don't know. Maybe there's some psychology there in that. One other thing, when Skip introduced me, he told the story of me getting engaged, and why not? Part of growing together as a team is about experiencing things together, and this was something that experienced with him. And so he told the story about how I got engaged, but I already kind of told you the first date I had with my wife was rugby associated. Also, when we were kind of seeing each other, and I'm going to tell one story, and then I'm going to lead to the engagement. So the story before the engagement is that I'm going to meet family. So this is about a year before we got engaged. But anyway, I was in a apartment on State Street. So State Street is the main drag where college kids go to have fun. It connected the state capitol with the university. Famous, if you know Madison, it's on State Street. State Street is the place to be. Anyway, we had an apartment on State Street, 121 and a half State Street. No longer exists. They tore that building down and replaced it with something glass. Anyway, me and 3 other rugby guys, Joe Kafka, Kurt McEwen, and Kurt Hellman, are in this apartment, and it's got a wood-paneled like living room area. It's got a fake fireplace with a mantle, and over the mantle, we're like, hey, let's do this right. And so I had an old Leinenkugel's paddle from the 125th anniversary or 100th anniversary, so one of those. Big anniversary for Leinenkugel's. I got a paddle because I worked some events there for it. I think they had a big softball tournament. They gave out this paddle. Anyway, I put that up. We had an old fish that my dad had caught. We put that up. And then we're like, you know what? We need a family photo. So we decide to go get a family photo, of course. So we go and all dressed in all white, got some ties on, kind of look like the produce manager at Kroger, the photos that you might see up in a grocery store. And so we all go to Walmart. This is the time when you had to go somewhere to get your picture taken, or a nice, portrait taken. So we go to Walmart, we get a appointment, or we just show up or whatever, and put us in a group of 4, and they put us in the studio. They take the picture, and great. So we got the picture, and then they're like, we got to take individuals now, and like, we don't want individuals, we just want the family photo. And like, and the guy just looks at us, just come on, this is my job, just take, we're gonna take the photo. And I'm like, okay, all right. So we take the photo, and I take the cheesiest photo possible. For some reason, I had a pinky ring on, don't know why. Don't wear one since, didn't wear one much after that, but had that. It's great. So we get all these photos, and the photos aren't done right away. Again, back in the day, that's how it was. They couldn't just print them out. So we, go back home. Eventually they call, say, hey, we got the photos. We go, one of us, I think it was me, because I worked by there, go to pick up the photo, and they say, hey, there's how much for the family photo. I'm like, great, that's all I want, 8x10, got a frame from Walmart, we're ready to go, put it on the going to put it on the mantle. They're like, wait, do you want to also purchase your individuals? And we're like, no, we do not want those. And even though they look fantastic, we did not want them. And they're like, just take them. And they just threw them in. So we had them. All right, so we put up the family photo. All's good. Okay, so later, fast forward to, it's dating my future wife. We are in at my apartment, and all of a sudden I hear, my girlfriend at the time calls up and says, hey, do you know what your roommates are doing? I'm like, it's late at night, and I'm like, no, what are they doing? They are handing out photos of you. Like, what? And it turns out they had taken the individual photo of me, made, I don't know how many copies, hundreds, maybe, and were handing them out on State Street when people were coming out in the middle of the night, right, ready to go home. And they're saying, have an Amadon. They're handing them out there. And they were like, and I remember going out, like, what are you doing? Like, I came down from State Street, and came down like a block or two, and there they were, like, what are you doing? And all of a sudden they're like, go. And they would run. One of them would put up one of the photos, and one had tape, and they'd run around a pole, like put it up on the pole and run around and tape. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I see it up on kiosks and things. I'm like, what is happening? And I'm like, you guys are crazy. And so they'd put up some of my photos, and they were handing them out. It was weird. So fast forward to the next day, when I'm going to class, walking up Bascom Hill, which is the main hill on campus, up to Bascom Hall. And I'm going to, I don't know, I think it was a botany class. Yeah. Well, it turns out that they had gotten my schedule, and not only had they put it on every single kiosk multiple times up and down State Street, they had also put it on the sidewalk on Bascom Hill. They'd gone into the classroom that I was in. Later on, I went to work. They was on the billboard, or in work. They was stuffed in the books at my work. I worked at Steenbach Library. Steenbach synthesized vitamin D, if you didn't know that. Very famous research scientist from Wisconsin. But it was everywhere. And some of them, they had written Club Amadon all night long, all night strong on it. And so I was getting emails, not a lot of phone calls because cell phones weren't as prevalent then, but a lot of emails saying like, are you sick? Are you dying? Is it your birthday? Where is Club Amadon? What time is it open? Like all these questions. And the funny thing was that Saturday is when, or Friday, Saturday, something like that, is when my girlfriend's family, my current in-laws, her family was coming to town to visit for the first time. And they're like, they meet up with her, and they're like, we can't wait to meet this new boy that you're excited about. And like, what does he look like? And she's like, right there, there's his picture. There's his picture. And in a recollection or a reflection from Katie's mom, she said, well, he sounds fun. Like the fact that he would have roommates that would do this. And so I'll post a picture of the picture that they posted all over, and the family photo if I have access. Yeah, I got it. Anyway, so that was kind of leading up to me meeting the family. But then later on, so Skip tells a story. Skip didn't tell that story. Skip told the story of our engagement, where I wanted to get engaged on the field. I don't know, just a romantic, and maybe wanted to create this lifelong connection between us in rugby. And so in rugby, when you get injured, you go on a knee. So I'm like, oh, we're primed, man. And so I gave the ring to my coach, Skip, and then we had it so that was also a game where my mom was coming and she had helped get the ring together, and then and so she knew about it. But then the in-laws were coming to watch me play rugby that day. We were going to play UW Eau Claire. I had never been on a team that beat UW Eau Claire. They were a very good rugby team when I was playing back in the day. And for some reason, I thought, well, this is the game to play, right? This is the game we're going to win, and we're going to play against this team that never beaten before. But if we can win, I wanted to win. I didn't want to get engaged on a loss. I was going to ask Katie to marry me. And so Skip had the ring, and Tom Dedham, who was a freshman that year, was very fast. He was a wing. And for some reason, we were spinning the ball out to him, and he was scoring all the time. And it was after one of his long scores, like, 40 meters, whatever. He scores, and I'm like, oh, now's the time. And so, and we're up big. And so I go down on the knee, and I'm like, Skip, and like give him the sign, and he talks about coming out and, like, never having to do this before or since. He says to Katie, this raspy voice, and Katie's really confused, like, why is he calling me? His mom's right here. If he's really injured, is he that injured? And if he's that injured, why are you calling me? Because his mom's right here. And she probably figured it out, because we were pretty serious. So she comes out, and Skip had slipped me the ring, and I asked her to marry me, and she did. Now, not being as good of a gentleman as I should have, I did not ask permission beforehand. So on my way back, I ran back to the kickoff. I stayed in the game, got to stay in the game, and asked Ted if it was okay, and he gave me a thumbs up. So that was my father-in-law, my future father-in-law, and he gave me a thumbs up. So that's what we had. All right, so that was a story that Skip told. But back to what rugby meant to me in my development as a teacher. I do think, like, I wanted him to be a part. I wanted Skip to be a part of that. I wanted my teammates to be a part of it. They created relations. We had created relationship. We had done hard things together. And that's, I guess, another thing rugby has taught me is doing hard things together bonds you and builds relationships. And, and as my colleague, Dr. Ammon Rowe, would say, when you do hard things together, if you're doing hard things by yourself, you might feel shame that it's hard for you. But when you're doing hard things together, there is no shame. And there's feeling of this perseverance and this bonding. It's almost like, the heat, pushing things together and welding them together into something powerful. There is something there. And so, create an environment where people want to be there, people want to do hard things together. Because playing rugby, like, when you think about it, there wasn't a lot of people, there wasn't any stands at a rugby field. If there was, it was, they weren't used all that much. But it's just people standing around wanting to have a good time and play this sport together. And it was a choice. It was absolute choice. Playing high school football, there was something there about being under Friday night lights. There was no Friday night lights. Pretty much, if you're playing rugby, you're also choosing to not go to the college football game, right? Like, I had season tickets to the college, and I basically sold them all because I couldn't, because I was playing rugby, right? And it was something about doing hard things together. There is something about that. And so thinking about what I want my students to do and what I want their students, so my students as teachers, to do is do hard things together so they can all get better. And I want them to demand of their students they do hard things together. The number one standard for mathematical practice from the Common Core is to make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. Perseverance, man. And so that's what we did as a team. And that's, again, what I want my students and I want of their students to do, is make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. The problem might be, how do we score this ball? Or the problem might be, how do we solve this math problem? Speaking of math problems, there's a great math problem, a rugby problem, that when I told my methods instructor, I think his name was Chris Hartman, I want to say. I might have that wrong. He was... he's like, oh, you play rugby. There's a famous math problem that have to do with rugby. So rugby, and this is a complete side note, rugby is unique in when you score in rugby, you actually have to touch the ball down. there's touchdown, right? So it's called a try, but it's not scored until you get into the end zone and put the ball on the ground. Now, once you put the ball on the ground, that point means something. So if you score in the corner, is different than scoring in the middle. And the reason why is your extra point, right, comes when you pull back the ball in a perpendicular line from that point. So a line that's perpendicular to the goal line from the point. That's the line, the perpendicular line that's at the point where you touch the ball down, perpendicular to the goal line. That line is where, somewhere on that line is where you need to place the ball to kick it in order to get your extra points. Okay? So if you score in the corner, that's harder, right? Because like you got to, and you think about, I got to pull it back so I can get an opening in the goalposts they're on the goalposts in rugby are on the goal line. So you can't, I mean, you couldn't kick it right from the 1 yard line because you couldn't even get an opening, right? The poles would basically look like they're in line with each other. So you have to pull the ball back so you get more of an opening. So the problem is, like, given any point N that you score, right, what is the optimum pullback to get the best opening to kick the ball, right? Because you want it to be as close as possible, but you want it to be as open as possible to give you the best opportunity to go through the goalposts. So I'll see if I can find a link to some description of that problem, because I probably didn't do the best job of describing it in a audio-only podcast, but there's probably a diagram or something, and maybe it'll be a problem you do. I think it's be a calculus, like an optimization type problem. All right, so there's some fun for y'all on a Saturday afternoon. Okay, so I think about all the different things that I did with rugby, and so just to some, thinking about John Sander, about being present, about thinking about putting the phone down and having a conversation, being present, being a good listener, right? Offering only what is asked for, offering what is needed in a situation, I think is good. Stuart, I think about offering good constructive feedback, right? Earned feedback, and also too thinking about developing something beyond yourself. I think about with Skip, I think about developing environments where people want to do hard things together, right? And welcoming environments where other people might be the vehicle of your messages, but it's still your environment that you've created. I like that, and there's a great article about never say anything a kid can say. And I think that's like never say anything the captain can say or never say anything the president can say. I think Skip would go along with that too, about how to be a good leader. And one of the things I had to do, because there's I think a post on the Hall of Fame website having to do with my induction. But I talked about influential teammates, like, I talked about a lot of these guys already. Kurt Hellman invited me to the first practice. Will Enright was my first captain. Michael Woody Woods was my first president. I think about all the different experiences. Stimpy, Ryan Trummel, like all these people that I've had experiences with. And then there's people that come in and out, like all the different stories. And I don't remember all the wins and losses, but I do remember the stories. I do remember the experiences. I do remember, again, doing tough things together with guys that build a relationship with, and it was kind of my fraternity. And I guess one thing to be self-critical is, like, I haven't done as great a job about staying in connection. When I think about how meaningful that time was to me in my development as a person and as a teacher, like, I want to do better about staying connected. So maybe this is one way to start it off, is to share this. So that's going to do it. I'm going to just wrap it up there. No album of the episode. Just wanted to get this out. While the speech was fresh in my mind, I just wanted to get this recorded and out. And we've done a lot with regards to doing these kind of exit interviews with the dissertations. So, and it's the beginning of the semester, and we're going to pause on the album of the episode. We'll do it next time. So that's going to wrap it up for this visit to Amidon Planet. Show notes, which maybe I'll find that rugby problem. You go there. You can see them at amidonplanet.com/episode 132. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can subscribe, rate, review, and share this episode to help others find this content. You can also subscribe to the email list to receive the Amidon Planet Dispatch for teaching resources and updates from Amidon Planet, really trying to focus in on low cost and free opportunities to develop as a teacher. So want to committed to that. Okay. So if you sign up for the email list, that's what we're kind of put out there. And if you want to engage further, hey, submit a question, comment, or suggestion in the mailbag by sending an email to joel@amidonplanet.com. Lastly, I'm always looking to collaborate with those leading others to love through teaching. If you have an event or opportunity, email me at joel@amidonplanet.com or visit amidonplanet.com/about to fill out the request to call form. Thank you for spending time on Amidon Planet. Thanks to the UW, University of Wisconsin Rugby Club, for just the honor. I'm excited. I'm excited to be a part of the Rugby Hall of Fame. It means a lot to me. One of those things it's weird thinking about it 20 years later, right? So thank you to all of them that were involved in that process, all the current team, the alums, my fellow nominees, all that, our fellow inductees. Really appreciate it. Thanks to Matt Muffin for the music in this episode. Finally, thank you to all of you out there learning to teach better, maybe playing a little rugby, and all those being the good in the world by investing in the lives of others. This world is a better place because you have decided to use the gifts you have been given to serve others. Thank you for all that you do. Peace.